Okay. Here are the remaining deliverable one presentations.
Oh, it was on the desktop and delivered.
This one?
Yeah, yeah, you clicked on the desktop one up there on the grill? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go ahead and run it. So mine is also pretty basic. I got it to increment 9, I believe. So I labeled the, I guess, bead board or the board as circles, and then this bottom row I called beads. So like game bead is an individual one of these that you can click on. I put my enter key, or wait, that's the next one, but this is the bead board structure. It's the row of colored beads at the bottom. So, and versus this is just an individual. My content view. Trying to move this. There we go. In my Z stack, I have my mastermind, all guesses view, bead board. I put my enter button in there and my on tap gesture. So like in the console when I click on it, it should. How do you show the console?
I'm sorry?
How do you show the console?
Where your mouse was down on the right corner of that window right there, there are those side slider windows, right there.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Ah, so yes, when I click on it, it just says clicked on enter button. Here's my guess. I had in my symbolic constants, which I could probably have more of, but I had an array of colors, beats per guess, max guesses, and then the default color, which is just like this white. So that's just a single guess. And then my guess view this is the beat guess view, and if it has a color ID, which is given when it's clicked, then it turns that color. If not, it's just white. This is my structure for a bead guess row view, and this is where my on tap gesture is too. Model is where everything is, obviously. So I labeled my rows. I just kind of kept them like this is still row 9, but it just de-increments. Once I go to the next, it's just row 8, and then once I get to 0 is when it knows it's at the top, or when it knows it's done. So the way I did my secret code is I just had it as numbers. It should be printed out somewhere over here, but I don't know if this is up to date because this is where I had my secret code in the init function, but it was just an array of integers that correspond to the symbolic constants. So like if it was 0, 0, 0, 0, the code would have been purple, 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 purple. Here's my select bead function to select a bead down here, and then select circle. First I make sure the user has selected a bead. If not, it'll print error down here. And then if the board isn't full, this is to check the whole board to make sure it's full, and then this is to make sure the row is correct. And I had a lot more debugging statements, but I took them out because they were getting annoying. But I feel like what I have now is good. And then, yeah, all of this. I had a count to keep track of whether or not I can go to the next row. And then when I click on the enter button, if the count is correct, then I can go to the next row. Versus like right now it's 1. If I click on it, it goes back to 0. This is a count. And then now it's 2. And I did have some problems just with the logic of this, but I figured it all out. Here's my structure for virtual bead. Yeah, here's my select enter key function. This is just, it allows it to go to the next row if we're able to. And it doesn't go to the next row until obviously this is clicked. But I can't click up here or down here. And I think when I finish, it just says you've reached the top and it won't let me do anything else. But yeah, I have not done any bells and whistles yet. And then I think once I click enter, you've reached the top and I can't do anything else. Here's my V model. This is where I call all these functions. Yeah, I definitely want to add sound effects and multiple screens, like a winning screen and a losing screen, play again button, but those are to come. So.
Anybody have any questions? Now that I can see again, perhaps to your detriment, your screen display seems very stable, and you might think that's a strange comment to make, but as I was finishing up the increments through number 7, I noticed some people had some problem with things shifting around on the screen, and sometimes those were corrected in later increments and sometimes were not. In other words, when you click on a bead, it might spread them out.
Oh yeah, I never did that.
Beads would move rather than just highlighting it. Did you do anything special to try to make the spacing behave itself, or did you just get lucky and it happened automatically?
I think I just got lucky. I did a lot of what you did watching your videos, but no, my spacing was never weird. I think it was at first down here, but I don't know. I think I just made it a little bigger, the enter button. But no, it never moved or anything.
Okay.
So.
Anybody else have a question? Oh, and if you're one of those people, I did say you had full credit through increment 7, but I didn't say that there were no with mercies and some comments. So you'll get all that back with your voluminous midterm report that has my discussion of your increment 1 and not increment 1, deliverable 1 and presentations and everything else. So you get a full-blown midterm report and you can take it from there with your bells and whistles. Any other questions, Ms. Kirkhope? Thank you.
So, hey everybody. So what I'm about to present to you is not what I turned in for my deliverable 1. It is something I did yesterday, and it's just like new stuff built on top of Alex's old stuff. Basically, because we were always sort of collaborators, like her code was my code through increment 7, and now my code is her code from 7 to 9. Yeah, so just bear with me. I was having problems getting this thing to run, so hopefully, I can fix it now. Where is my, I think it's, nope. That's the old version. And then get rid of that, do that. Don't know why this folder's not opening for me. There we go. I think this is the correct one. Should be. Okay. So you can see it does give you the secret code. So it works. Obviously it's what Alex presented, but there's some extra goodies. So now what you can do is like it tells you what you tap and stuff, and like you can change your colors, like all that good stuff, and then you can't touch anything up here. But then when you hit enter, it now starts to give you feedback. So it tells you that yellow is correct and in the wrong spot, and then blue is correct in the wrong spot. So if you go back to the very top, it tells you that blue is supposed to be where yellow is, and then yellow is supposed to be where blue is, so those two are actually swapped. So the feedback is correct there. So looking at the correct answer, let's do something else. Let's do like all reds. So there's only one red here. So when you enter, it should tell you that there's a red in the correct spot, which is what it does. So another one, let's do red, blue, yellow. Let's do something like that. So it should tell you that the first three are correct, which is what you want. And then, again, this is all in the model. It doesn't actually show up anything on the UI yet. So to finally get the correct answer, let's do red, blue, blue, yellow. It will switch up to the top and show you the key, and the game ends, so now you can't touch anything else. So a little bit more on how I implemented this, because I did struggle a little bit with some of the logic of it. Like I had it basically like where it was telling you more than one feedback per bead, which is incorrect. So going into the model, all of this is goodies are happening in the submit current row. So what I did was I made local copies of the secret code and of the user guesses. So basically what I did was I first checked if the two things were equal. So if what the user guessed was the secret code, and if it was, it prints that you got it, and then it sets this Boolean, which is what shows the code on the top. So otherwise, I did get introduced to this fun little guy. So basically what enumerated does is it takes your array and it basically can give you the index and the value in one. So basically you can pull out both your variables, which is really helpful. So first what I had to do is check if it's correct and in the correct spot. So I looped through the user's guesses. And so you check if the guess in that spot is equal to what the index is of the copy. So they're all numbers. So if like 1 is equal to 1, that means red and red. So then I actually changed the value to a negative number. So that way when you would go loop through it again, you wouldn't like get the same answer twice. Like it wouldn't give you multiple feedback loops. And same thing with just two different negative numbers for the user guesses copy. So again, when you loop through again, you're not getting two things that are the same when they've been basically deleted from the array. So then you do the same thing to see if it's the correct color in the wrong space. You just used the generic, you use something called .contains, so it can tell you if an element is in an array, which is also really useful. So that's from the Swift documentation. So then, and the reason why contains doesn't give you the same answer as something that's correct and in the correct spot is because those have already been changed to a different number. So it only sees stuff that hasn't been like quote unquote matched with a hint. So that's how that works, and then the rest of the enter decrements as usual. So I don't know if that kind of makes sense or not. I sort of went through that kind of fast, and it was like I was getting all kinds of issues. Like at first I tried to change it to nil, and I was getting so many issues only when I realized they're regular integers, not optionals. So I couldn't do that. I was getting that nasty thread crash thing. So then I realized that if I just change it to a negative number, it works works fine and it works the same. And I had to make local copies because obviously if you're changing stuff, you're changing the actual guess, which will change what shows up on the screen because they're hooked up through the view model. And then if you change the actual secret code, that's bad because you're going to have a different code each time you go through. But other than that, it's the same as Alex's code. We have so basically what's going to happen next is we're going to have to go into the score field where you have basically, so in here is where you do like the colors of the feedback beads. So those are going to have to change to red or white based on what the model is telling you. So yeah, any questions? Yes.
How did you keep track of the guess row? Like that first one, is it green, yellow, blue, purple, or is it all
It's an integer. So it's basically the integer number is the index number of this.
Mm-hmm.
So number of 1 in the array just represents red.
Yeah.
So that
just kept
yeah.
track of it.
Yeah. So basically you just have 2 arrays and you're checking, are these 2 arrays equal? You loop through and see, is this element at this index the same as the other array's element at this index? And then when you go through again, you check if it's just in there, period. Because once you find a match, it's gone. It's kicked out. So that's why you're not getting duplicate feedbacks. Yeah. So there's probably better, cleaner ways to do this. I could probably make it a function, where all this checking is happening should be its own function, and that way I can call it in submit current row. That would probably be a little bit cleaner, but to be honest, I wasn't even sure if I was going to get this to work. I was just sort of playing around with it. Yes?
When you change, so when you find a match and you change it, you change the secret code too?
Yes, I changed both of them. So that way when you're looping through, if you have this is only a problem when you have duplicate colors in either your user guess or in your secret code. Because if you have 2 greens and it finds a green match, then that's your match. But if you have a second green in your guess, you don't want that to go back and match because you already guessed green.
Yeah.
So that's where that was coming from. That's why I was getting multiple different feedbacks for a bunch of different things. So I was getting, am I allowed to draw on the board?
Yeah, have you got markers?
Yeah. So if you have,
And just to be clear, these are local copies of both
yes,
the user guess and
Yes.
the secret code?
yes, because I'm
Because
changing.
you're trashing them?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's say because this was literally so confusing trying to figure out what the feedbacks. So let's say this is your answer. And you guessed something like this. What it would be doing was, instead of giving you 1, white bead, it would be giving you 1 white bead and then 3 red beads, which you don't want the 3 red beads. You want, once this matches, you want it to be gone.
Explain your white beads and red beads. How do you interpret those?
It would be one red, 3 whites. Because the red is means
Red?
it's an exact match.
Red is exact match, okay.
Yeah. Wouldn't it just be 1 red?
It's supposed to be.
That's why it's supposed.
That's why I had to do the local copies. So that's why, because once this goes away, you're just comparing this.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you're not getting the extra.
Yeah.
So red equals exact.
Understanding that yourself is not the same thing as explaining it to a computer.
Yes. So my first version, it was giving a red, and then, so my first version, this is what it would have been. But that's wrong, because it would loop through, okay, finds a match, it's correct, but in the wrong spot, correct color, wrong spot, correct color, wrong spot, correct color, correct spot. So basically what I did was, when I found this was correct color, correct spot, you get rid of this. So that way you don't have correct color, correct spot anymore.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make more sense now that I drew it out? Okay. So yeah, it took me a hot minute to figure out how to fix that. And then that's when I came up with doing the local copies so I could trash my arrays and not trash the whole thing. So I hope that was helpful. Dr. England, was that better about slowing down and explaining stuff?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Dr. England said my GitHub demo might have been a little too fast, a little too confusing, so I was trying to do better here. So if nobody else has questions, that's all I have for you.
I just have a quick comment and maybe a mild warning.
Okay.
I've seen it happen before. Now that we are transitioning over to the model,
Mm-hmm.
and you already mentioned that maybe I should have used separate functions or whatever, but I just want to go ahead and try this and see if it worked and get it done.
Mm-hmm.
The model, especially because it's not directly related on the screen, and the screen is easy to visually parse things and partition things into different types of objects and everything.
Mm-hmm.
The model, if you're not careful, it will be the model monster, and it will grow organically and be a gigantic one structure inside one file that tries to do everything. And then when even just a little bit of it goes wrong, you have to go through and rethink the whole thing again.
Mm-hmm.
So my warning is be very mindful of looking for places where you can kind of separate out different sub-functionalities of the model and at least make them different functions or different structures, and at best even have multiple files like we did. This business of a separate file for the keyboard from the main view, a separate file for the enter key.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do that last time. I ended up with complexity creep, and I ended up with code that was such a tangled ball of yarn that I couldn't get parts of it untangled.
Yeah.
So part of this is me reporting my experience to you, that wherever you can, as you sort of sense that, well, this is something different from what we were doing in the rest of the model, consider breaking that off and making it its own thing so that not only you can debug it separately until you're convinced it works, but when things down the road, either you want to enhance them with bells and whistles, or you do discover a bug down the road. It's a lot easier to zoom in on which part you need to work on rather than having to go through this monstrous single file called model.swift that tries to do everything.
So how would you split the model into separate files? Just have the functions and then call them?
You can even have separate structures. Yeah, you can have a structure that's nothing. Well, you might already. I can't see that way. But the feedback leads, those don't have to be part of the model. Those can be their own separate thing, and the model uses them and calls functions over there. There are a few if I recall, some logistical difficulties of getting things to hook together the way you want to in all cases, and sometimes it's some of those @sign things, the @published and @state and all those sorts of businesses.
Yeah, like I
But
definitely.
it is doable, and I think it's worth a little bit of extra effort to try to keep things small and simple rather than huge and complicated.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to make this whole block of something. It definitely needs to be its own function that is then called by the submit row, just because it's a lot and it's messy and it's not actually directly related to submitting the row. It's just something that needs to happen after the row is submitted. But like I said, I literally did this like last night. So like I said, this is new stuff.
I've got to work on mine as well. It's been sitting under a shade tree in the backyard for a long time now, but I do have my own version of Mastermind, and it is still suffering from complication bloat, where I've got too much going on in one or two structures and one or two files, and I need to split those up. So I will be fresher on that when the time comes that we need to get serious about all of the things that need to happen in the background behind the scenes.
Do you want me to close
And
this?
I'm not going to completely shut down when we get Wordle up to the point where it's not serving our needs anymore. I do recall, whether they show up in the videos from last time or not, I do recall doing a demo of overlays, like when game over or whatever, you want to overlay that on top. That's not any big deal, but that's still something that I can demonstrate in the fake Wordle game that is of use to the mastermind. It gets harder to make connections between what I would be trying to do in Wordle and things that might be useful to your mastermind project. But that's another piece of homework for me. I'll just have to work at finding ways that I can illustrate things without giving away the whole stuff and stealing all your fun.
Thanks,
Any
guys.
other questions? Thank you. Even though the backspace key is, I hope, short and simple, we'll find out. I don't want to run into the business of doing a 10-minute video and saying, well, I'll finish this after class and send you a link to it. So we'll just start fresh at the beginning of class on Friday, and we'll just stay here. If I have to call off CS2 because we need the class for a period for a couple hours, we'll just stay here as long as it takes to finish the backspace. Or we'll invite them in. That'll be it. They get a demonstration of things to come in upper level classes. There. So, okay, I'll admit it on video. I'm cheating you out of 10 minutes of your hard-earned tuition dollars.